first time I saw her, she was standing in the rain outside the emergency room, crying so hard her whole body shook. Not the kind of crying you do at movies or weddings, the kind that comes from somewhere so deep inside you that it feels like your soul is trying to escape. Through your eyes. I was supposed to walk past her. I had my own problems, my own burdens pressing down on my shoulders like concrete blocks. But something about the way she stood there, drenched and alone, made me stop. I didn't know then that stopping would change everything. I didn't know that this woman, this stranger whose name I didn't even know, would teach me what it truly meant to be human. Her name was Sarah, though I wouldn't learn that for another 20 minutes. When I approached her that night, she looked at me with eyes so full of pain that I almost stepped back. Almost. Instead, I asked the simplest question in the world, "Are you okay?" She laughed, a bitter sound that cut through the rain. "My daughter," she said, her voice breaking on every syllable. "She's in there. They don't know if she's going to make it." The words hung between us like ghosts, and I felt something crack open inside my chest. I should explain something about myself. 3 months before that night, I'd lost my job at the factory where I'd worked for 15 years. My wife had left me 6 months before that, taking our son to live with her parents in Ohio. I'd spent the last 90 days applying for jobs, getting rejected, watching my savings account dwindle to nothing. I'd been on my way to the hospital that night because my blood pressure had spiked so high. I could feel my heartbeat in my eyeballs, and my neighbor had practically shoved me into her car and driven me there herself. I was broken, and barely holding on. I had nothing to give anyone. Nothing except maybe 5 minutes of my time. "Come on," I said, surprising myself. "Let's get you inside where it's dry." She shook her head violently. "I can't go back in there. I can't sit in that waiting room and watch those doors and wonder if the next time they open, it's someone coming to tell me she's gone." I understood that feeling more than she knew. So instead of arguing, I stood there with her, in the rain, like an idiot, or maybe like a human being. We stood there for 10 minutes before she started talking. Her daughter, Emma, was 8 years old. She'd been hit by a car while riding her bike home from her friend's house. The driver didn't stop. Sarah had been at work, cleaning offices downtown for minimum wage, when she got the call. She'd taken 3 buses to get to the hospital, and now she was here, soaked and terrified, with no one to lean on. Emma's father had died in Afghanistan when she was 2. Sarah's parents had passed years ago. She had a sister in California, but they hadn't spoken in 5 years over something. Sarah couldn't even remember anymore. "I can't lose her," Sarah whispered, and it wasn't to me. It was to God, to the universe, to whatever force might be listening. "She's everything. She's all I have." The rain kept falling, and I kept standing there, this stranger's grief pouring over me like the water from the sky. Then I did something I can't fully explain. I put my hand on her shoulder and said, "You're not alone. I'm here for however long you need." The hours that followed were the longest of my life, and they weren't even my crisis. We eventually went inside, but I stayed with her. I bought terrible coffee from the vending machine with the last $10 in my wallet. I sat next to her in the waiting room, not saying much, just being present. When she needed to cry, I let her cry. When she needed to rage about the unfairness of the world, I let her rage. And when she needed silence, I gave her that too. Around midnight, a doctor came through those doors Sarah had been so afraid of. I watched her face go white, watched her stand on legs that barely held her. The doctor was young, tired, and when she smiled, I saw Sarah's knees buckle. "She's going to make it," the doctor said. It was touch and go. "But your daughter is a fighter." Sarah collapsed into a chair, sobbing, and this time it was different. This time it was relief and joy and disbelief all tangled together. But the doctor wasn't finished. "She's going to need extensive physical therapy. The injuries to her legs were severe, and I have to be honest with you about the costs. Even with whatever insurance you have, you're looking at significant out-of-pocket expenses." Watched the joy drain from Sarah's face. Watched reality reassert itself like a cruel slap. She nodded slowly, and I could see her doing the math in her head, knowing it didn't add up, understanding that saving her daughters, life was only the beginning of an impossible journey. I went home that night at 3 in the morning, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Sarah, about Emma. about the way life can save you and drown you in the same breath. I thought about my own problems, which suddenly seemed smaller somehow. And I thought about that moment in the rain when I decided to stop instead of walking past. It hadn't cost me anything, really. Just time I would have spent feeling sorry for myself anyway. But it had mattered. I'd seen it in Sarah's eyes when she'd hugged me goodbye and whispered, "Thank you for being my person tonight." The next morning, I did something crazy. I created a fundraising page online telling Emma's story. I shared it on every social media platform I had, which wasn't many, and I asked my small circle of friends to share it too. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few $100s from people who felt moved by a sad story. What happened instead was a miracle. Within 24 hours, the story had been shared thousands of times. People from all over the country, people who didn't know Sarah or Emma, people who were struggling themselves, started donating. $5, $10, $20. Some gave more. A lot gave what they could. The comment section became a chorus of strangers offering love to a woman and child they'd never met. My daughter survived something similar. I lost my son, but I'm so glad Emma made it. I can't give much, but I can give this. We're all connected. Humanity still exists. Within a week, we'd raised $50,000. I cried when I saw the number, actually cried, sitting at my laptop in my tiny apartment. I called Sarah, who'd given me her number that night at the hospital, and when I told her, she screamed. Actually screamed with joy. "How?" she kept asking. "How is this possible?" And I told her the truth. Because people are good. We forget that sometimes, but people are fundamentally good. The story could end there, and it would be beautiful. But life is strange and circular, and sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. 2 weeks after the fundraiser, I got a call from a man named David Chen. He'd seen the fundraising page, been moved by it, and happened to be a regional manager for a manufacturing company. They had an opening for a production supervisor. Was I interested? I almost laughed. Almost asked him if this was a prank. Instead, I said yes. The interview was 3 days later. I got the job. The salary was better than what I'd been making before. The benefits were incredible. David told me that they'd been looking for someone with experience and heart, and my willingness to help a stranger in need. Told him everything he needed to know about my character. I wanted to argue that standing in the rain for a few hours didn't make me special, but I was too busy trying not to cry to form words. 6 months later, I was at Emma's 8th birthday party, which was really more like her second chance at life party. She was in a wheelchair, but the doctor said she'd walk again with continued therapy. The fundraiser had covered everything and then some. And Sarah had even been able to cut back her hours at work to be with Emma more. The party was small, just a few of Emma's friends and their parents, plus me. Sarah had insisted I be there. "You're family now," she'd said, and she meant it. As I watched Emma laugh while her friends played games around her, Sarah came and stood next to me. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "For that night. For everything after?" I shook my head. "You don't need to thank me. I didn't do anything special." She turned to look at me then. Really look at me, and there were tears in her eyes. "You stopped. When you had every reason to keep walking, when you were dealing with your own pain, you stopped. You saw me. And then you made the world see us. That's not nothing. That's everything." Maybe she was right. Maybe in our disconnected, isolated world, the simple act of stopping, of seeing another person's pain and deciding it matters, is everything. Maybe kindness isn't about grand gestures or life-changing actions. Maybe it's about standing in the rain with someone who needs not to be alone. Maybe it's about using whatever small platform you have to amplify someone else's voice. Maybe it's about recognizing that we're all just humans, stumbling through this life. And sometimes the person who saves you is the person you decide to save. I think about that night often, about the choice I made to stop instead of walking past. My life is different now. I have a good job, I'm rebuilding my relationship with my son. I've even started dating someone who makes me laugh. But none of that would have happened if I hadn't stopped that night. Not because stopping led directly to my job offer, though it did, but because stopping reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That I was capable of being more than my circumstances, more than my pain, more than my problems. Sarah and I are still friends. Real friends. Emma calls me uncle, which makes my heart swell every time. Last month, Emma took her first steps since the accident. and Sarah called me immediately, crying and laughing simultaneously. I drove straight to their apartment and watched Emma walk from the couch to her mother's arms, 6 shaky steps that represented months of hard work and determination. We all cried, and it was beautiful. Here's what I learned from all of this. What I want everyone to know: you have more power than you think. Your presence matters. Your compassion creates ripples that spread farther than you can imagine. That night in the rain, I was broke and broken. And I still had something valuable to give. We all do. Every single one of us has the ability to stop, to see, to care, to act. And when we do, when we choose connection over isolation and kindness over indifference, we don't just change other people's lives, we transform our own. The world tells us we're too busy, too broke, too tired, too broken to help anyone else. The world is wrong. The truth is that we're never too anything to be human, to be kind, to stop in the rain for someone who needs not to be alone. And sometimes, in the strange and beautiful mathematics of the universe, the person you save ends up saving you right back. Not in obvious ways, not always in material ways, but in the ways that matter most, by reminding you who you are, who you can be, who we all can be when we choose love over fear, connection over isolation, compassion over indifference. So this is my challenge to you, to all of us: stop. The next time you see someone standing in the rain, metaphorically or literally, stop. See them, be present, offer whatever you have, even if it's just your time, even if it's just your witness to their pain, because you never know when that simple act of kindness will create a ripple that becomes a wave that changes everything, for them, for you, for all of us trying to find our way home through this strange and beautiful and difficult world. Title her I did, in every way that mattered. I titled her worthy of being seen, worthy of help, worthy of a stranger's compassion. And in doing so, she titled me too, human, kind, capable of love even when I thought I had nothing left to give. We titled each other into better versions of ourselves. And that's what humanity is supposed to do. That's what we're here for. To title each other over and over until everyone knows their worth, until everyone feels seen, until no one has to stand alone in the rain, wondering if anyone in the world cares that they're drowning. We all have that power, every single one of us. The only question is whether we'll use it.